What's up, guys? Garage Goons, episode 29. I know you're probably thinking, why the fuck is this dude wearing sunglasses and it's super late at night? Well, I got this new ring light and it's bright as fuck. But I do think it makes the videos a little bit better on my shitty camera. So here we go. I just watched the Jon Jones post-fight 285 interview where he fought Surreal Gone. And I got to be honest. Jon Jones is like maybe the most interesting character in all of MMA because he is this guy who forever has had an identity crisis. And what I mean by that is when he first got in the UFC, he would always, give thanks to Jesus and talk about, God and his religion and Christianity and Philippians. He's got the tattoo, the whole thing. But then, he was the youngest UFC champion all time at 21. And real quick, I'm doing laundry in the back, so if any of that's getting picked up, I apologize ahead of time. Obviously, this is not a Joe Rogan level studio. Probably looks like a mess. Actually, you can see my. Oh, check that out. The laundry just stopped. Cool. Jon Jones is the most naturally gifted fighter we've ever seen. And he won the undisputed 205 at the time. It was the most coveted belt because historically, if you just look at the divisions of the UFC and the stars it's created, it only in the last like 10 years, the other divisions have gotten shine, but it's been really the light heavyweight division that year over year had the biggest stars with the belt. Tito Ortiz comes to mind. Chuck Liddell comes to mind. Vitor Belfort, Randy Couture, Quentin Rampage Jackson, maybe the most famous tough star ever, Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Shogun Hua. These are the guys. And Daniel Cormier, let me not forget. Daniel Cormier. These are the guys that really, yes, Connor's the biggest star of the sport ever. And then after that, you can make an argument for a whole bunch of people. You could talk about Ronda. You could talk about Brock. You could even talk about Jon Jones. But the 205 belt historically has been the most coveted belt. And the one, whoever is champion of that division is usually a fan favorite. And he wins it at 21 years old. He gets all this fame. Him and Anderson Silva, I think, were the only two athletes in all of MMA that were ever sponsored by Nike. And once the UFC caught wind of how big that check was, that's when, they were like, oh, fuck that. We need a piece of the pie. So they signed a exclusive fight kit deal with Reebok. God, those were trash. And the Venom ones are way cooler, but it's still garbage to me that these fighters have to wear what the UFC tells them and they just get paid whatever. But I digress. Jon Jones changed a lot of things for a lot of people. Anderson Silva was so damn good that he beat a prime Forrest Griffin. But as soon as they were like, hey man, Anderson, you're gonna move up to 205 and fight Jon, he was staunchly like, hell no, like never, no thank you. I've seen that man. I know what time it is. That is not going to happen. And he was smart to do that because I think Jon Jones is just a giant, bigger version of Anderson Silva with way better wrestling. I think that Jon Jones has had a very interesting career arc. He got the fame young. He got the money young, rags to riches story. His brothers are in the NFL. Like the whole family's had wild success, but the UFC is not a league in the same way that the NFL is, where it's a team-oriented thing and everyone's keeping you accountable, and there are stringent punishments, and you know, they take millions of dollars off the table if, it's really an organization. It is a league, but it's really an organization with a bunch of independent contractors. So a lot of these wild guys are left to their own devices too long, especially if you're fighting twice a year, 3 times a year. That's a lot of downtime, man. I mean, even if you're training the whole time, if you're Jon Jones, imagine being 21, you're the baddest man on the planet. Nobody can figure you out. Nobody can beat you, and you're already being crowned the greatest we've ever seen. At 21 years old, he just was able to legally drink. After watching, it's so interesting. Like even the post-fight interview, you know, John, going back to this identity struggle, right? He tries so hard to stay humble and seem like the good guy. He wants to be the good guy so bad, but he is, I'm not going to say a villain, but he is the anti-hero. He can't help himself. He feels like he wants everyone to see him as the good guy. He wants so badly to be John Cena. He wants so badly to be The Rock, but really deep down he is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He is, The Undertaker. He is the ultimate villain. And if he knew how to lean into it the same way Connor did and says, I apologize to absolutely nobody. I, you know, People, especially now in cancel culture, are so, what's the word? I guess like there's no amount of apologizing that you can do um to get in the good graces again. That's the world we live in. Once you make a mistake now, especially if you're a big public superstar like John is, you do something bad and it's off with his head. It's, now you have to pivot and only appeal to the fan base that loves the anti-hero. And by the way, in combat sports, that is the way to be. Okay? Like the nicest guys in the sport, George St. Pierre, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, you know, there's plenty of nice guys in the sport. Glover Teixeira, these guys don't make nearly as much money as Ronda Rousey, Brock Lesnar, uh, um, Conor McGregor. Why? Michael Bisping. Why? Because they're nice and people love watching villains. People love watching villains in combat sports. Floyd Mayweather is the ultimate villain. People love it. People will tune in to a villain because they want to see him or her lose. And if they win, it just fuels the hate and hatred. I mean, go on Twitter, go on social media. Somebody posts something salacious or hateful, it's going to get a million reactions. Somebody says, "Oh yeah, this guy did a good job. I really like him." Nobody's going to even put a like on that. We know this. We know that negativity gets way more attention than positivity in this clickbait online world we live in, especially with sports, especially with combat sports. But John doesn't get it. He thinks in his mind he's George St. Pierre. That's who he thinks he is. But even in the post-fight interview in the Octagon with Rogan, you know, he talks about, oh, Gain is a good fighter, blah, blah, blah. And then he calls Francis a pussy. And then he grabs the mic right before he walks off and goes, bah, like, I'm the GOAT. And that is a heel move. And I think John thinks that, oh, people see me as the good guy. So therefore, I can get away with doing these little things and it'll just be funny or it'll just be endearing. But it's not. It's not. The good guys can't help but be good, and the bad guys can't help but be bad. But most of them know which side of the fence they fall on. John has no fucking clue. And John is, I don't think he's devoid of a conscience necessarily, but he has some sociopathic tendencies, man, because he just doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. Okay. When you do something or are accused of something like a wife, beating the dog shit out of her, having your daughter run down to security and having them call the police, then fighting several officers and getting arrested after, and that's just the latest one. And that's after cocaine. That's after, I mean, they cleared the record. They said the fights count because of the picogram, but come on now. We all know, man, if you have estrogen blockers, there's a reason for that in your system. That's because you were on the sauce and you were trying not to get gyno and have all these negative side effects. Okay. John John is deny on all of the bad shit that is not absolutely proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And when he gets caught red-handed, he goes on an apology tour. You know, he went on an apology tour for the accident and he says he's been doing work and stuff. But then when he's questioned in the post-fight press conference and they say, "Well, Dana's a little bit concerned about you having an after party tonight." Instead of saying, "I understand the concern. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to partake in any illegal activities. I'm going to have good people around me. It's just going to be me and my team. We're going to do this thing. We're going to host this club, get this little check and bounce." He could have said that and that would have been acceptable. But instead, he said, "Well, Dana of all people knows, we all make mistakes." That in itself is just ugly. It's dirty. Like, still fuck Dana for hitting his wife. I'm not excusing that at all. But to say, "Oh, well, Dana of all people should know that we all make mistakes." That's just so snarky and just like, dog, like why would you double down on it, so to speak? Like, it's almost like, remember when you're a kid and then you got caught doing something bad and then you're getting in trouble and then you're like, "Well, he does it too. Your brother, my brother does it too, or my friends do it too." That doesn't make it okay, man. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't excuse your behavior. That doesn't make you more uh like less guilty. It's never a good excuse. It's never a good comeback. It's something that you think of because it's like, well, if he was doing it too, it must not be that bad, or he would understand. No, Dana White said, "Listen, I have to live with this shit forever." And I deserve everything that they say about me. That is the route to take, because nowadays you never get a forgiveness from the people. You just forever get shamed, and then you can eventually crawl back years later if you're wildly successful and you just continuously do the right thing. You know, it's almost like saying, "Well, like Ray Rice is a good guy. I met him, but he has a past too." It's like, yeah, but why would you drag somebody else's dirty laundry into yours? They're not talking about Dana White right now. They're talking about you and your after party. And then he talks about he went on this tangent for about a minute and a half of the interview about, yeah, I make mistakes and I think that it makes me more relatable. It's interesting and almost bizarre to me that all of the things, the cocaine, the DUI, street racing, the ramming his car into a pregnant lady and then fleeing the scene, and then you know allegedly, although I don't know, I mean, he didn't get convicted, so I mean, I guess innocent until proven guilty. But when your own daughter is running down the stairs to alert security that your dad is whooping your mom's ass, and your dad also happens to be like one of the baddest dudes on the planet, hitting a woman, and she is bloodied and battered, you know, I don't care if you're guilty in the court system, but that's just unacceptable to me. Unfucking acceptable. And the spin-off, the way he the way he tries to spin it is I'm more relatable now. People know I make mistakes. I used to talk about God in the beginning of my career, and I'm going to start doing that again. And I'm surrounded by a bunch of good people and leaders, and I think that my mistakes make me more relatable. That's not relatable, bro. Hitting your wife is not relatable. DUI, hit and run is not relatable. Everybody has a story. And you know what? He even could have said something like, "Hey, I am not perfect and I never have been and I never will be. I'm working tirelessly on my fight career, but most of all, just being a better dad, a better husband, and a better human being and a better leader than I was before. And I can't take back the things I've done, but I can learn from them and move forward and try to make this world a better place because I've been given a second chance, which not everyone gets." He could have said something like that. His publicist, I mean, I don't even know if John has a publicist, but if he did, I'm sure that he or she would be getting migraines on the daily just with the quotes that this guy gives, because saying that I think it makes me more relatable also gives credit to it in a way where it's like, well, yeah, if it didn't happen, then everyone would just think I was perfect all the time, and I'm not perfect all the time. Listen, man, that's dead. That's redundant anyways. We all know nobody's perfect. George St. Pierre is not perfect, okay? The nicest guys in the sport are not perfect. We all know this. Like, that's redundant. You don't even have to say it. But when you do this dumb shit and this evil shit, and I do say evil because anytime you put hands on a woman, I just believe that there's no place for that. And it gets categorized in such an interesting and just toxic way where you're saying, I think my mistakes make me more relatable and people thought I was perfect before this. No, dude. No. Nobody ever thought you were perfect. You're only you're only perfect record-wise and in the octagon, man. Like you can't tell me after the first thing that, "Oh, it makes me more relatable." More relatable is like more relatable is like you let's say he just got caught for cocaine. Okay, I struggled with, substance, whatever. That's relatable. You don't want to be relatable to dudes that hit their wives, dudes that flee the scene, driving drunk and hitting a pregnant lady. Who's that relatable to? What kind of fan base are you trying to get with that? Nobody likes you more after you've done that. We all love America loves a comeback story. Rocky lost the first fucking fight, right? Apollo whooped his ass, lost that fight. We love a comeback story. We don't Nobody goes to see a movie where the guy's just winning the whole time. That never happens. It's either the guy's winning the whole time and they lose at the end, Friday Night Lights, Remember the Titans, all this stuff, or they fall down flat on their face and they come back. But John has not fall down flat on his face and come back. He fall down, he fell down, he got up, he fell down again, he fell down again. But it's not just him falling down. At some point, it's not just circumstantial. It's not just bad luck. It's not just you took an L. It's you are making bad fucking decisions. And hey, listen, he's a free man. He didn't go to jail for the last thing he allegedly did. Okay. His wife chose not to press charges, or maybe she's a fiance. I can't remember. Okay, fine. But what, why would you try to parlay that into being a more relatable person, hitting your woman? What kind of sense does that make? Jon Jones is a fucking sociopath. He looks at the lens where everything is he's the good guy and people see him that way, and he feels that people see him that way, and he needs to be seen that way. So instead of just eating it, instead of just saying, listen, man, I've made really awful mistakes. and I'm trying to get better, and I'm focused, and I'm trying to move forward. And with the after party thing, like I said, he could have just thrown the wet blanket on that. Listen, man, we're not drinking. We're not doing anything crazy. My whole team's going to be there. All these guys are in the USADA pool. They can't afford to have anything in their system. I can't afford to have anything in my system. I've learned my lessons, and I continue to grow every day. And this after party, I won't be doing partying. I'm just going to be there, man. He could have said something like that, but no. He says it makes me more relatable. This is how Jon views himself, as the eternal good guy. Like he can make mistakes, and he will always be seen as this golden child. Most people fucking hate Jon Jones. Even if I know people like me, for example, I love him as a fighter. If all he was the guy that stepped in the cage and did what he did, great. And by the way, I'm also not against people talking mad shit and like in the press conference and selling fight. I'm not one of those guys that says shut up and dribble. I'm not one of those guys that says, oh, he should just be more humble, or all that, like, that code talk for like, oh, look at this, another boisterous athlete trying to talk shit or trying to talk about stuff that they don't. Just do your job. That's not interesting. I love fighters that talk shit. Some of my favorite fighters all time, Muhammad Ali, talk mad shit. Okay. Chael Sonnen talked mad shit. Rampage Jackson, same thing. Like, a lot of the guys that I grew up watching and learned about over time were great on the mic. But you need to know time and place, man. You need to be self-aware. And I just feel like he has this thing where he feels like he's entitled to people's love, and he almost doesn't understand it when they hate him. Despite all of, like, his reasoning will be like, well, you make mistakes too, therefore you should love me. And if you don't, he doesn't know how to handle it. He doesn't know how to handle it. When he was suspended, that's probably why he was doing all the crazy shit, because he can't handle not being loved for something. He can't handle the criticism. I'm sure he went to a dark place. But I don't think that dark place was for feeling shame or sorrow. I think the dark place was for having the world in his palms and fumbling the rock, fumbling the bag, fumbling the image that he has of himself in his head. He has an image of himself that is a good guy. And the entire rap sheet on Jon Jones is bad guy. Even his fighting style. People have talked about, oh, well, he holds his hands out and he pokes guys in the eyes. And he said, yeah, I do that sometimes. He didn't say, well, it's all accidents, whatever. He's like, yeah, I do that. And other guys have said, well, his knee teeps, the way he teeps the knee, it screws up people's knees. And it's kind of a dirty move that hasn't been illegal in the UFC yet, but it is something that they should take a look at. He talks about grabbing Glover Teixeira's wrists and jamming his arm up against him and dislocating his arm, and that's a technique he worked. Now, if it all is good in love and war, right? So if there's no rule against it in the UFC, by all means, I mean, go ahead and do it. You know what I'm saying? But don't sit here and say that you're not a dirty guy or a guy that uses techniques that are frowned upon. You know what I'm saying? So like, and he leans into that, but the social stuff, the stuff he does outside of the cage, he just doesn't lean into anything. And you can't lean into hitting your wife. I'm not saying that, but certain things you just got to take the L. You got to take the L. Jon, you have to take the L. You have to come clean. You have to say, listen, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to be a better person. That was not right. I'm wrong for that. We all fall short, and I'm no exception, and I'm trying to get better. But it's always like he puts some sort of yeah, but on the end of it. We don't like excuses, man. We don't like you. There's no way you can spin a story positively towards yourself. No one is thinking, wow, yeah, I relate more to Jon Jones now that he's done cocaine, beat his wife, and crashed into a pregnant lady and done steroids. Like, one of those things would be enough to end 99% of the guys in the UFC's career effectively. You have to be the top 0.1% to be able to come back from one of those things. But all of those things, there's only one man on the planet that can do that, and that's Jon Jones, because he is the GOAT. I'm done saying Anderson's the GOAT. I'm done even entertaining the idea that GSP or Habib, it's not them, it's Jon. It is fucking Jon. You look at the hit list of champions that he's knocked off before and after him, because Glover got the belt after Jon Jones. When Glover was younger, stronger, and probably faster, Jon beat the dog shit out of him. Lyoto Machida, Jon beat him. That's a champion. Shogun Rulet, Jon beat him. That's a champion. Rashad Evans, okay? Jon beat the dog shit out of him. I mean, Rampage Jackson. I mean, the list goes on, man. The list goes on. And Jon dethroned all these guys. Daniel Cormier. And now Cyril Gane, who's never a champion. So I can't count that. But I mean, now he's got the undisputed heavyweight strap of the world. Unfortunately, we live in a world where Francis Ngannou is no longer a part of the UFC. Hopefully that's not a permanent thing. Dana White makes it seem like it is, but we've heard that story before, and he lets guys back if they, do good enough and demand enough respect and win enough fights. He said he would never have Nick Diaz back in the UFC, and he also said that about Tito, and both those guys came back. So we'll see, man, but I think maybe part of Jon Jones's success is his holier than thou, infinite good guy delusion he has in his head. Maybe because he's so unaware of reality and the way he's perceived by people that he always feels like he's the guy to win. He's going to be he's infallible as far as going in there and feeling like he's the underdog. He is always feeling like he's the good guy. He's always feeling like it's the people want him to win and he should win. I'm sure that part of that delusion and that lack of self-awareness probably led to his greatness, as well as just, let's call a spade, man. The guy's an athletic freak. His whole family's professional athletes, 21 years old, champion. I mean, come on, the list goes on. But Jon Jones is so narcissistic and an absolute sociopath, man. He can't see the forest through the trees. Everything he says comes with a caveat that casts him in a positive light, even if there's nothing to be positive about. There's a million directions you can go. You can divert. You can say, listen, man, I don't want to talk about that. Like, it's in my past. I'm not proud of it. There's a lot of things in my past. You can talk about it in detail and say what you're doing to make it right. You can say what you're doing now. You can direct the conversation to what you're doing now to be better, to be more, I guess, to be more of just a better person, less of a menace to society, less of a villain outside the cage. But Jon needs to figure it out for himself, man. And I don't know that he will, because he talks about, oh, when I was young and all this stuff. Dude, you were doing this shit like a year ago. You're 31 now, but you were doing this shit at 30. You hit your wife at 30. And 3 years before that, you were 27. You had 8 years in the business. You were a veteran of the UFC by the time you were 27, man, when you were taking steroids and doing cocaine. Like, come on, bro. I'm not saying it's time to grow up, but I think he needs the best PR person in the game, and he needs to listen to them. Like, 100% he needs to listen to them, and he needs, I don't know, he may have gone to therapy, but he needs something to guide him in a positive direction that's not going to lead to, his wild shit that he gets himself into that he just never seems to fully own up to. Jon Jones is great inside the cage. Outside the cage, man, I mean, fuck. What a disaster. What an absolute disaster. I hope he gets it right. He's training with Henry Cejudo and those guys. I think Greg Jackson still privately trains him or whatever. I don't know if he's still in Jackson's camp, but I know he is training with Cejudo's guys for the most part now. And I think he's not training in Albuquerque anymore. So, but yeah, man, Jon Jones, something else, dude, something else. We witness greatness in the cage. We witness atrocities outside of it. And I'm not saying hold this over his head forever, but man, penance. Penance for your fucking shortcomings, dude. You're gonna have to pay the piper someday, man. And hopefully it doesn't take like a Mike Tyson type thing where you have to go to jail for an extended period of time and then you have to do a whole bunch of, shrooms and shit later on and psychedelics to try to humble yourself and then, in your 50s people love you. Hopefully it doesn't take that long, bro, because you're great now, bro. You're great now. Work on yourself, dude. Work on yourself. And fucking stop trying to shift the conversation to where you're the good guy. It's all good. Forget about it. I'm relatable now. Y'all made mistakes. You know what mistakes are like. No, we don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to see you fight. Everybody wants to see you win. Well, actually, maybe a lot of people want to see you lose, but everyone wants to watch you. And the best thing you can do now is own everything. Own everything. Say what you did wrong. Lean into it. Own it. The shit that's not the worst in the world, you lean into that. Play the villain. Stop trying to be the face, bro. You're never going to be John Cena. You're never going to be the good guy. It's not going to happen. It's too late for that. Ship has sailed. Lean into being the bad guy, but when shit gets real and they talk to you about stuff that you just can't make a joke about or, whatever, lean into it, man. And be apologetic, dude. Just be straight apologetic. No and but, no, don't add anything on the end. That's how you become relatable. To make it seem like you're not trying to forget about it, but you're trying to evolve into a better human being. Garage Goons, the most trash show on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Episode 29. Jon Jones is a goat. He's probably also a sociopath. And I think that we are done with that. All right. Yeah.